it to a $2 billion surplus. He trimmed spending at the state by $5 billion. Now, John Kasich grew up in Pennsylvania. His father was a mailman for 30 years, middle-class American. He and his wife, Karen, are parents to twin daughters, teenage daughters. Now, I want a big round of applause for the next president, Governor John Kasich.
Completely crazy. Wow. Wow, thank you all for... Didn't you have anything better to do this morning, huh? No, this is really great. Is there a way they can lift that so people can see? There you go. That's better. There's some smart people there. Well, thanks for coming out, and I want to make sure that we get to some questions here. Obviously, it's what I thrive on because I want you to be heard. But I should start by kind of telling you a little bit about myself and where I come from. I grew up in a little blue-collar town that was right outside of Pittsburgh, and it was all Democrats. There were no Republicans that lived in McKees Rocks. Well, no, I mean, I'm just telling you, and I'll tell you why. Because they really thought the Republicans were for the rich and Democrats for the working people. And until we fully connect with Americans as Republicans, we better prove to them that we're for the working people, that we're there to give everybody a chance, okay? Now, and we shouldn't just say it, we ought to act like it, okay? We ought to do it. So this was a town where, and this will be familiar to many of you, if the wind blew the wrong way, the people found themselves out of work. My father carried mail on his back for 29 years. He even delivered mail to our home, and he was a guy that sort of knew everything that was going on along his mail route. And I never really knew about the way my father was in the neighborhood until my parents lost their lives to a drunk driver, and people lined up outside that funeral home to talk about my father and how when things were great and the kids scored a touchdown or the daughter sang a solo in the choir, he'd celebrate with them, and whenever things didn't go so well, he would cry with them, and that was my daddy. And his father was a coal miner, and he would dig the coal and spend the whole day down in the mine, which was as tough as it could be, and he'd bring his haul up, and they'd say, well, you didn't bring enough coal up. You brought too much peat, and therefore we can't pay you what you think you should get paid. And you know who he would go to help get that made right? Nobody, because nobody cared or nobody had any power. It's that they did care, but they didn't have the power to change the rules. And then my grandfather got older and he died of black lung, and he was losing his eyesight as he was dying. My mother was one of 4 kids. 3 of them never made it beyond the 8th grade. And my mother would walk across a footbridge over a railroad track to get her high school diploma. And she was very smart, though. I used to say that she was a talk show pioneer. When somebody would say something on the radio, she would yell at the radio, and I would hear this. And her mother could barely speak English. So people who think we ought to close our doors to immigrants, I think they're just dead wrong, okay? Immigrants matter in our country, okay? Now, you know, the people that lived around me, they worked in steel mills, chemical plants, fix-it people, And, you know, it was a great place, though. I mean, it was God-fearing, common sense, all the things that were kind of the heartbeat of our country. And I decided to leave that town when I graduated from high school to get a kind of a whole new start. And I went to a small little school in the Midwest that I'm not sure you've ever heard of. It's called Ohio State University, okay? And we had like 48,000 students there. And when I got there, I was in this big, tall tower, and I had 15 college roommates. We were all crammed. It was like sardines, okay? And I was there a couple weeks, and I kind of got upset with some things. And so my Uncle Emil had told me that if you ever want to make changes, you've got to go right to the top. So I called the president of the university's office and asked for a meeting, just to tell them what my concern was. And it didn't go real well, and I just kept bugging them, you know, bugging them. And for the young people that are here, there are a lot of lessons in this. You want something, you go get it, okay? And what I find in life is the more you want it, and the more you bug people, the more likely they are to give you what you want, because they just want you to go away, okay? So they finally let me in for a meeting, and I go in to see the president of the university. And he was impressive. He was a big, tall guy. And he asked me, you know, what's on your mind? And I told him. And I looked at him and I said, sir, before I leave, you know, you've got beautiful carpeting, furniture, lighting, wallpaper. This is really awesome. I'm undecided here, sir. I've been here about a month. And I'm kind of thinking maybe this is the job for me. What exactly do you do? And so he tells me about his fundraising responsibilities and his academic responsibilities. And he says, tomorrow I'm going to fly to Washington because I'm going to have a meeting with President Nixon. I've been familiar with him for a while. And I said, well, sir, there are a number of things that I would like to talk to him about also. Could I go with you? And he said, no, you can't go. And I said, well, if I write a letter, would you give it to the president? He said, well, I guess I could do that. So I went back to my dorm room and basically wrote a letter to the president, basically inviting myself for a meeting at the White House. And I signed it sincerely, John Kasich. P.S. If you would like to discuss this further, let me know. I'm a college student. I got time. I can come see you, you know? So a couple weeks later, I go down to my mailbox, and there's a letter from the White House, Office of the President. I open it up. I go upstairs to my dorm room, and I call home to my mother. And I said, Mom, I'm going to need an airline ticket. The President of the United States would like to have a meeting with me in the Oval Office. And my mother is shouting, honey, pick up the phone. There's something really wrong with Johnny, okay? Now, can you imagine this? So they get me an airline ticket after a lengthy debate because they thought it was a hoax. And I remember when they drove me to the airport, when I was getting out of the car, my mother said, when you get down there, they won't let you in. Well, but just don't worry, we'll be here. You come on home. So I fly down, and I get to the White House, and I go through the security, and I walk into the White House, and I'm sitting right outside the Oval Office on a little bench. And a guy walks up to me, and he says, young man, you're going to get 5 minutes alone with the President of the United States. Now, I'm an 18-year-old first-quarter freshman. What do you think? You're saying, oh, my God? Let me tell you what I'm thinking. New jacket, new shirt, new tie, new pants. I didn't come this way for 5 lousy minutes, okay? Right? Amen. So they open the door. I walk in. I greet the president. He greets me. We sit at his desk. The good news, I spent 20 minutes alone as an 18-year-old freshman with the President of the United States. The bad news, I spent 18 years in Congress, and if you add up all the time I spent in the Oval Office, I peaked at the age of 18 and should have moved to Greece. Huh? So, you know, that's been my whole lifetime. And, you know, I got to tell you, when you get things like that happen, you can't be thinking that you got something special, because it's lightning, and it's really grace that has come my way. And I have been able to be in positions of authority. And I want you all to know, because I know when I said that McKees Rocks was all Democrats, some were booing, okay? Here's what I want you to know. The Republican Party is my vehicle and not my master. I do not operate. See, I was telling the folks in the overflow over here that it has been always my job to keep in mind those people that I grew up with. We don't have to worry about the rich, the connected, and the powerful. It works out for them. I mean, they have other problems. But for all of us who've spent, trying to play by the rules and get somewhere, we just want to believe the system's fair, I think. We just want a fair play. That's all we want. We want opportunity. That's all we want. And I've always felt in politics, and look, the reason I've won all these elections is basically because of grassroots folks going out and knocking on doors and putting up signs. That's been my history. It's pretty hard to run for president on that basis, but it's what served me well throughout my career. I was first elected to the legislature, and I made two promises: no pay raise and no tax increase. Well, I got there. The first thing they did was raise the pay, and I had to turn it down because I'd made a promise. Maybe the promise was dumb, but I made it. You keep your promises, okay? And the second thing I said is we're not going to raise taxes on people. And the Republicans raised taxes, and I wouldn't vote for it, and they criticized me. So I offered my own budget. And I said, don't call me irresponsible. I'll give you a better way. It made me a lot of friends. Then I went to Washington. I was 30 years old as a congressman. I was elected in 1982. I was the only Republican in America to defeat an incumbent Democrat, and I ran on the Reagan program of lower taxes and a stronger military, okay? And by the way, in 1982, nobody would appear with St. Ron. Nobody would appear with them because the interest rates were high, the unemployment was high. Anybody remember those years when you were in business? Nobody would have show up with him, except he gave me more time with him. He was a very cool guy, and not just that, he was a good president, a great president. So anyway, I won, and here I am. I'm just a kid going to Washington. My mother and father are like, "Johnny, what are you doing?" You see, when I grew up in McKees Rocks, almost all the politicians, not all of them, but many of them, went to jail. I'm serious. They did. So I went to my high school reunion. So I go to my high school reunion, right? And this guy, I'm like, I'm a congressman, big shot. This guy walks up to me. He says, "Johnny, I voted for you to be most likely to succeed. What happened?" That put me in my place. So anyway, so I go to Washington, and guess the thing, I find out that the taxpayers of this country are paying tens of thousands of dollars for screwdrivers, hammers, and nuts and bolts, and that the defense contractors were ripping us off. So I got into a war with them. That made me real popular in the Republican Party. But we changed the laws. And then, later on, we were going to build this airplane called the B-2 stealth bomber, and its initial mission was to fly inside the Soviet Union in the middle of a nuclear war and drop more nuclear weapons. And I'm like, well, how many nuclear weapons do you have to drop in one day, to ruin people's lives? So I got together with this very liberal Democrat, and we proposed that the Pentagon wanted 132 and I wanted 13. And we spent 10 years fighting. We put Republicans and Democrats together. And I ended up losing that battle. Instead of only building 13, we built 21. The Pentagon wanted 132. Who won? Do you know how much? Do you know what defense contractors think about John Kasich? But here's the thing, folks. We can't spend money rebuilding our defense and providing the resources to the people who fight on the front lines by accepting waste and misuse and overruns and all this other nonsense that takes money from the people who have to fight the wars. I'm going to fight for them. I don't care who it makes angry, okay? So, but actually, we rebuilt the defense. And it was a time when Republicans and Democrats really worked together because we wanted to destroy the Soviet Union. Now, it's been a little while. It's been a little while, but I remember like it was yesterday when the Berlin Wall fell down. I was in Berlin with my wife. I took her on her birthday, her 50th birthday, which was just a couple years ago. If you're watching, sweetie, you still look great. But anyway, we were at the wall, and if you go to Berlin, there's not much of the wall left. It's a shame, but there are pieces of it. I don't know why I tell you this, but I want you to hear. So I'm standing there, and I'm looking at the wall, and there's a lady who has got a carriage and a little baby in the carriage, and her other son was kicking a soccer ball on this, and because the line was like right there. I mean, you build a wall, this side of the wall you're free, this side of the wall you're not. And I'm looking at this, and I'm there with my wife and this guide, and I started to cry. And my wife is like, what are you doing? And the guide's like, we got to get out of here. And I said, no, you have to understand. That baby and that mom could have a free life to live out their God-given destiny. And the people that were on this side of the wall, they were like slaves in a lot of ways. Their whole future was denied of them. And when that wall came down because of the United States of America, it changed the whole world and set people free. And there's nothing more important than freedom. So anyway, 6 years into my service in Congress, I got on the Budget Committee and decided I wanted to balance the budget. Now, why did I want to do it? I don't care about numbers, folks. But what I do know is when the debt keeps rising, our jobs keep disappearing. And I know that if we can get the debt to stop rising and bring the debt down and have some sanity, that we actually can have more jobs. So I spent 10 years of my life, and let me give you a little story. In 1989, I offered my first budget proposal. There were 4 budgets offered that year. The President of the United States, it happened to be a Republican, Bush, the Democrat budget, the Black Caucus budget, and the Kasich budget. The vote on the Kasich budget that year was 405 no and 30 yes. And of the 30, at least 10 of them came from my pals who were Democrats that didn't want me to be embarrassed, who didn't believe in a thing I was doing. Now that sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? 405 to 30? I thought it was great. I got like 29 other people that thought I could run America, so we're going. And here's what I learned. First of all, I had great friends that always told me if they thought I was off track. But if I was on track, they stuck with me. And what I have found is in life, they can pound you and pound you and pound you, and the more they pound you, the more support you get from people who watch. Because people want to believe in something good and in something bigger than themselves. And 10 years into this, Senator Domenici from New Mexico and I negotiated the first balanced budget that we achieved since man had walked on the moon. We paid down $500 billion of the national debt. The economy was roaring, and the issue of income inequality and job security was not an issue because America was booming in employment because we used the formula to fix the country, and we got it done. And the reason why we don't do it is because people get weak. And what they forget is if we practice good economics and we make choices, everybody will rise. And what happens is we die by 1,000 different cuts. That's exactly what happens. That's why we're now 19 trillion in the hole. And by the way, when I spend that, I said, well, you can't spend 5 trillion. Well, they did. And they spent more. So I was out. I left. I'd got all my defense stuff done. I got the budget done. And by the way, don't hang on to anything. hang on loosely, but don't let go. That's probably a big good thought for a song. But so I was out for 10, I just don't like it. And I got a call. Anybody here ever got a call? I don't mean on the phone. I don't mean a text. Anybody here, raise your hand if you ever got a call in your life, okay? It's a beautiful thing when you get a call, because you can't resist the call. And I flew home, and I remember exactly where I was when I got the call. And I flew home to Ohio, and I told my wife, I said, sweetie, I have to make a decision. I'm going to have to run for governor. She's like, great, okay? All these years, and you're going back in. That is just fantastic, okay? So I called her, by the way, when I was getting ready to come in the building, and she said, would you start wearing a sport coat and look proper to people? So she's still watching. Anyway, so I run. And Ohio was a disaster. We had lost 350,000 jobs. People were run over. We were 20% of our operating budget in the hole. They were ripping up our credit cards. The state was not going to be able to take on much more debt. It was all kinds of things. And so I didn't really care about politics, folks. I said, we'll not only balance the budget, but we're going to cut taxes. And people are like, this guy is crazy. And we unleashed a program of people who believed. And at the end of my first year, I think I was the most unpopular governor in America, because everything had been shaken. Everything had been shaken up. And so where are we today? Well, instead of losing 350,000 jobs, we now have 417,000 families who are working who didn't have a job when I became governor, okay? Instead of being $8 billion in the hole or 20%, we're now $2 billion in the black. And the other day, the legislators were saying, well, maybe we should spend some of that money. I said, over my dead body, you'll spend that money. And we're running this $2 billion surplus. And our credit has gone up, and hope has come back to our state. And I want you all to know that economic growth, and this is kind of back to McKee's Rocks and fighting for people who don't have many people fight for them. I believe when you do better, it's just like when mom and dad do better, the kids do better. When your state does better or your country does better, that means everybody should do better. So let me just tell you, we do not believe that the mentally ill ought to sleep under a bridge or live in prisons, and we are changing that in our state, okay? We don't believe that the drug addicted ought to have their lives flushed down the drain. We're rehabbing people and trying to prevent them from getting on drugs to begin with. And if you're a mom with a couple kids and you get child care, you get a pay raise because you're working poor, you get a pay raise, you lose more than what you gain. We want to make sure that mom can be given an award and rewarded for hard work so she can escape poverty with her children, and we're changing those laws. And one of the greatest days I had as governor is when we announced in front of parents who had adult disabled children with them that we're going to integrate you into the regular workforce if you're capable, that you have a right to live a life to the maximum of your abilities, because that's what the Lord wants. And people were stunned that maybe there would be a chance for their kids. And then, yeah. Now, folks, let me just tell you this, and then I'm going to conclude and take some questions here. We have a formula that allows us to have jobs. It's a simple formula. Have common sense regulations and do not crush small business, because they're the ones that hire our family, okay? Small businesses. And I will freeze all federal regulations except for health and safety for 1 year and begin to unwind those regulations that are killing our small businesses, okay? Secondly, we need to lower, I hate to say this because we have to lower the taxes on business. And let me tell you why. Because the businesses are investing in Europe because they can't bring their money back here. Not only do we tax them twice, but we tax them at some of the highest level. So they're creating jobs in Europe. You know, I'd rather have them create jobs right here in America, and I want to bring their taxes down. And I want to bring our taxes down as individuals because the small businesses pay in a pass-through way through their personal taxes. Any small business people here? Okay, well, you know, right? Am I right, sir? You pay through your personal. So bring that down and make the tax code simpler and have something that's realistic and can pass. And then I would also want to have a path to a balanced budget. See, there's three things: common sense regulation, lower taxes, and a fiscal sanity. And those three things give the job creators a reason to think that they can invest and create more jobs. Am I right? Okay, because if you don't have that, and here's what we have. Today we have more regulations, higher taxes, and we blow up the budget. No wonder why the growth is so anemic. No wonder why we're worried about our children. No wonder why we have job insecurity. We can fix all of that. And in the process, I want to transfer a lot of power. Welfare, education, Medicaid, job training, infrastructure, back to where we live, into our states and our local communities. And then we will rebuild our defenses, and I'll have to travel around the world and let people know that we got their backs. Instead of, you know, kissing up to our enemies and ignoring our friends, we're gonna show some respect to our friends. And we're going to fix Social Security so that people who have had higher levels of income are going to get less, and those who have to have it are going to get what they need. We're going to do that. And we're going to fix the border. We're not going to let people continue to just come in. But for those that are here, if they haven't committed a crime, we'll give them a path to legalization with a fine and back taxes, but never a path to citizenship. Now, all of that I will have sent to the Congress in the first 100 days. Okay? We're not going to waste time. Now, the final thing that I want to tell you before we go to questions. Okay, here's what I want to tell you. Do you realize there's never been anybody ever like you? Do you know that? There's never going to be anybody like you again. Ever. You're special, and you're special, and you're special. I was in Utah, and we had a crowd there, and there was a young woman, young lady, probably 17 years old, standing, and I was telling her, just like this young lady right here, and I was saying to her, do you know no one's ever been like you, and no one will ever be like you again? And she started to cry. And I don't know what it was. I never had a chance to ask her. Was that because for the first time in her life she realized how special she was? Or as my wife asked me, did you maybe scare her, you know? But you know, I believe we're all made special. And we were made special for a purpose. We're not made special just to kind of go through life and it's all casual and carefree. We're here to do something. We're here to make the world better, to live a life bigger than ourselves. And sometimes we don't find that out until we're 85 years old. Doesn't matter. But if you really believe that you're special and that you have a special purpose, and everyone in this facility, out here in the hallway, in the overflow room, if we all realize that we're part of a giant mosaic, take a snapshot of all of us, and this is a moment in time, and what did we as a group do to heal our country, to lift people next to us, to slow down and pay attention to people who are often ignored? You know, a lot of the ways in which we're able to carry out what I believe is our God-given purpose is through our work. So if you're a nurse, do we have any nurses here? Are you a nurse? Nursing school. Who else has here been a nurse for a while, huh? Right here. How long have you been a nurse, ma'am? 40 years. Let me ask you a question. When the time came to come off of your shift, how many times in your career did you spend another 30 minutes in a room with the family to tell them things were going to be okay? How many times? A lot. Did you know you changed the world when you did that? Probably didn't think about it that way, but you did. And how about teachers? They're the most underpaid people, okay? I'll bet they can all make a little bit more money than what they're currently doing. But the reason why they do it is because they're changing lives. Do you ever have any of those kids come back to you and say, thanks for what you did, or did you give a lot of tough grades? Which was it there, ma'am? No, but seriously, that's changing the world. Or a doctor who is calling people at 11:30 at night and saying, look, I got the x-rays back. I had to get those tests for you. Or how about, you know, I consider to be like the most important person in the school, the custodian. You know, I ran into a custodian, a janitor the other day. You know, the janitor, you know what makes the janitor so special? Because everybody can tell the janitor exactly what their problems are. The janitor in the school knows more about the problems of our kids than anybody else because they're the safe zone. And they change the world. Or, you know, let's say that you just find, you know this woman, she was married for 50 years, her husband dropped dead. Nobody calls her anymore. Nobody. So you call her on Monday and you say, hey, we're going to take you out to dinner on Saturday night. What do you think she does on Thursday? What does she do? Huh? Yeah, how does she do that? How does she get ready? Gets her hair done. Exactly right. And when she gets her hair done on Thursday, on Saturday, not one hair is out of place, okay? Not one. And then when you pick her up, she wears a dress that she hasn't worn in 6 months. Did you change the world? You see, folks, you want to fight drugs? What are you waiting on? You want to fix education? What are we waiting on? You want to begin to solve the problems of poverty? All you have to do is get the small business person in the welfare office and train the people when they get a check for a job. What are we waiting on? What are we waiting on when we feel so removed from our neighbors? You know, now we don't even know who our neighbors are anymore. The strength of our country is not in the president. The strength of our country is in us. It's in our families. It's in our communities. It's in our neighborhoods. Somehow, we've eroded the sense that we matter. Maybe it's because we think we gave all this money to the government and it's their job to do it. How they doing? No, I mean, and we want their help. We want that power back. We want them to get rid of all that stupid stuff that clogs up our lives. But at the end, we don't have to run for president to change the world. You know, whether I'm going to be president or not is really, you know, it's really important. But you think that's what's motivating me here today? What's motivating me here today is this. And if somebody hears this and they say, you know, damn it, he's right, and I'm going to do something, or I'm going to start doing something, it's worth my trip to this town. Okay? And when I tell you these things, that's why I am not in a position to ever take the low road to the highest office in the land. I can't do that. So we'll just raise everybody up, and let's commit to this, okay? Now, polite applause, I'll take some questions, okay? Thank you. I can't call on a guy with an Ohio State sweatshirt on. I mean, come on.
Thank you very much for coming to this small community and help raising us up. Eye contact and your word is just worth more than you know. My question would be, your stand on reducing aid by 50% to countries that will not help support us against the fight against terrorism. And can that be done without hurting the medical programs like fighting AIDS in those countries?
Okay, so here's the issue. Should we just go ahead and, first of all, we don't give as a percentage of our budget that much money in foreign aid. You know why we give foreign aid? I can tell you a great story. I have felt that foreign aid was too much about corporate welfare, that companies getting stuff, making money, and they go in and they build these big dam projects, and people would be displaced. And we have a program called the Agency for International Development, and it's designed to take people from the developing world to the developed world. You know how many people ever went from developing to developed? None. Okay, so I don't like the foreign aid programs as we have them. So at the end of my time in Congress, I met a guy, Schwarzenegger, and he's a friend of mine, and he asked me to meet with this guy. And I said, who do you want me to meet with, Arnold? He said, heard of him. And I said, Arnold, what is his name? He said, well, his name is Bono. I said, Arnold, I am not an Austrian bricklayer. I know who Bono is, okay? So I met Bono. And Bono has a song, you all know about it. It's called, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And that song is not about his car keys or his cell phone, okay? And Bono came to me and said, we have a program to provide some debt relief to countries in Africa that are going down the drain. I said, well, this may be the ticket for me. So we were able to get Republicans, Democrats. I was able to get Jesse Helms, who used to be a very conservative Republican, together at a press conference with Teddy Kennedy to announce this program. Now, when it came up on the House floor, I made a speech. And I said, when our planes are flying over, bombers are flying over an African village and the men are shaking their fists at us, the women come out and say, don't you do that, because the Americans vaccinated my kid. You see, foreign aid ought to be humanitarian, because we can't look the other way when people are dying or being washed up on a beach. When those kids die, we all die a little bit. But we also know that when we give foreign aid, it's designed to help us, not just them. I mean, we've got, and look, we look around the world, the Koreans, the Japanese, they're all spending lots of money to provide support for us. It's easy to demagogue this, okay? Things are not simple in the world. We tend to think of them as simple. They're not. Now, here's what I would tell you, sir. Let's just talk about, and look, I served for 18 years with some of the smartest minds. I was there, as I said, when the wall fell. I was there when the Arabs and the Muslim world joined the West to push Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. And I was there after 9/11 with Secretary Rumsfeld, helping them to solve some of their problems. I've seen the whole spectrum. And you have to be strong, you have to be consistent, you have to be tough, but you gotta know what the hell you're doing. This is not a time for on-the-job training. So, here's what I would tell you. So I'm gonna give you a couple examples of why it's complicated. Did you ever notice in life that you really want to burn a bridge of somebody that gave you the shaft, and then you found out you needed to go back across that bridge? That's what makes life so difficult. So here's the situation. So we have this organization, this group of barbarians, ISIS, and radical Islam, who would like to come into right where we are and blow all of us up, thinking that they're going to get a trip to paradise as a result. Now, you know, the world doesn't think that way. The percentage of people, even though the percent could be somewhat significant, is greatly outweighed by those people that understand that civilization is at stake. And instead of looking at this as just lemons, we need to make lemonade. The entire civilized world must be united with our leadership to destroy ISIS in the air and on the ground with all of us together. Now, here's what they say. Trump and Cruz. Trump says, well, we're not going to let any Muslims come in our country. What, are we going to have a test at the border? Show me what religion you're in? Or, Cruz, we're going to patrol Muslim neighborhoods. Let me ask you a question. If you want to know what's going on in a radicalized, if you have a Muslim neighborhood and you know there are radicals in that community, who do you want to ask? Somebody who lives there. So we're going to patrol them and say, oh, by the way, we want your help. It's absurd. We need to bring, and let me tell you something. Over in Saudi Arabia, these radicals are executing people, taking them out and killing them because they don't believe in this cult of death. The United States needs to pull this world together. Now, Turkey. I remember when Turkey would not let us fly some of our planes over. Do you know that we just found out that Turkey was the one that notified the people in Europe about this radical coming? And do you know that we need Turkey to help us to be part of the Muslim world that moves towards us so we can kill these radicals? Now, I mean, I remember when we called them freedom fries because we hated the French. What, we're going to just hate the French? I mean, we need them. Now, if countries do not want to help us in this fight, then you use what we all call leverage. You don't want to burn the bridge or blow up the relationship, but you want to be in a position of where you understand leverage. I just read today that the Russians helped us to get a guy released in Syria who had been held captive for 4 years. Vladimir Putin, bad dude, bad guy, bully, okay? And I'll tell you what I tell Putin. We're going to arm the Ukrainians with lethal defense aid, and don't you try to come and invade Europe, okay? But I'm not going to walk into the room, call them a bunch of names, and walk out. You got to be smart about the way you manage this stuff. Because I've got to tell you, I believe that the security of our world and civilization is at stake. Now, today I just disgustedly read about the North Koreans testing some sort of an engine that can be put on an intercontinental ballistic missile. Do you know who has to fix this? The Chinese. Now, you want to talk to the Chinese, you don't talk in front of these cameras. But I am fed up with the fact that they sit on the sidelines and play games, and we're going to have to use leverage, okay? This North Korean thing is a, not have. I would have come home, I would have gathered. That didn't happen. Now we need to make sure worldwide we have intelligence. They're coming here. Now, we have great organizations. We have the FBI, Homeland Security, state and local law enforcement, and their job is to disrupt, and they do. But we need to know who these people are and where they are and when they're coming. Now, we had a problem here with the Apple phone and encryption. Now, if I had been president, I would have taken the Apple technology people, and I would have taken our intelligence community, and I would have invited them for a little meeting in the White House. And then I would have locked the door on the inside, and I would have locked the door on the outside, and I say, you're not coming out until you fix this. Got it? Don't be putting this thing in a courtroom. So, you got to use a lot of leverage, sir, but you got to be smart. And the biggest thing we need to do is lead again. And some people say, oh, we're doing too much. You know what? We're America. We're always going to do more than what we should. Haven't you figured that out yet? That's just the way it is. And we don't need to be saps, and we don't need to be fools. But it's, you know what? We got people in here, men and women in here who are in the family, and the spouse says to them, why do you do so much for your mom and dad and your brothers and your sisters? Why can't somebody else do more? Ever had that conversation, huh? And you know what the answer is? That's what leadership is. And sometimes, if you're looking for justice here, usually you're going to find it on the other side of the grave. Let's do the best we can while we're here. Okay. Yes, ma'am, right here. We have any more? What, are we short on microphones or what?
First of all, from Seneca County, I'd like to say thank you so much for staying in the race. And as long as you stay in the race, we're staying with you.
Woo! Kasich! Woo! Woo! Woo!
And we don't need you to wear your sport coat to be a leader either.
Yeah!
We're currently here with a group of young Boy Scouts, several Eagle Scouts, and we're really proud of our youth. Our question is, could you speak to the youth a little bit about why it's so important in this time when we have so many people being put forth to our children as poor role models, maybe some in this race? Could you please speak to them about why it's so important to choose the proper role model, because we're here when the election's happening. They're the ones that are going to be here while you're serving.
Yeah, well, and they're the ones going to run the
Hopefully.
Well, look, I mean, we're all hungry for good role models, right? I mean, you know, it's why I said the other day, you know, if I have to pick a vice president, Derek Jeter's right at the top of my list, okay? Nobody's applying for sainthood, okay? I'm going to say I'm the most flawed person in this room, because I'm not holding myself up. I just know every day I can get up, brush myself off. And the great thing about the big guy is you get mulligans. Every day you get another mulligan, and thank God, or we'd all be lost. So, no, I think it's important for all of us. But you know what? The greatest role models are not the people who are famous. I would be willing to bet you that the best role models for these young men that are here, the Eagle Scout, you know, I bet their best role model is grandfather or grandma. That's what I would think. And so we all have to do our job. Let me tell you, I went to Cincinnati, and I was in the schools, okay? The graduation rate is 63%, okay? I went to this high school in the district where businesses go in and they meet with kids. They adopt a child in the school for an hour a week for a year. The graduation rate in that high school is 97%. Because what it means is that when we guide, see, what kids need to be told is they could be anything they want to be. That's what my mother said. Johnny, be anything you want to be. Don't let anybody talk you out of stuff. Have big dreams. And so I think the best role models are those folks. And then there are people way out here who are famous who we look towards. I'll tell you somebody that we're all, for those that like golf, are all falling in love with is Jordan Spieth. I mean, he says he gets his inspiration from his disabled sister. And he's a humble guy. He's polite. We love that about him. And, you know, it's too early to say, but this Steph Curry is something else, and people are looking at him, okay? And I'm glad to see that the Biebs is cleaning up his act, okay? That's what I can tell you. But you know what? The role models that mattered the most to me were never famous. They were teachers. They were people that are in my mind's eye who really encouraged me and helped me. And the teachers, right? You got one right behind you. So, hey, they're not only going to be around, they're going to run the world. And I tell you, I have found, I got to be short here, I have found that our young people all the way from, like 9, 10, and 11. They get up and they speak. And then the young men and women in college, this is a great generation. They are educated, they are smart, and I'm thrilled with them. Okay, how about up here? Anybody up here? Shout it out, ma'am. Whoever, I called on somebody, so somebody shout.
College student debt.
College student debt. Let me say a number of things about that, okay? First of all, are you in college?
I just graduated college, University of Albany.
Okay, here's the situation. The situation is that for those, okay, let's talk about moms and dads here who have kids that are thinking about going to college. And by the way, I have twins that are 16 years old. Yes, they're good kids. One of my daughters got elected or selected to a leadership position in her school yesterday. I'm really proud of her. But anyway, look, first of all, we should be taking college credit plus courses in high school and getting credit for college before we leave, and it's free, number one. Number two, a big chunk of students when they graduate from high school, no, we're not stopping. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not stopping. You get your college credit plus, and then there's a big group of students who are not really good in math and English, even if we thought they were, and they have to take remedial math and English when they go to college. They're paying college tuition to stuff they should have learned in the 11th grade. We have to remediate them online. We need a national program to do that, so when they enter college, they enter prepared. Now, in addition to that, there is nothing wrong with going to a community college for 2 years. You will cut your costs in half. In addition to that, it's very important, and this should be done across this country. Our college and university presidents have to work to control their costs, and they are not doing it, okay? They're not. So we assembled a group of business people who understand cost cutting, and they have made a series of recommendations, and in my state, they're going to take it seriously, and if I'm president, we're going to do it nationally to make sure they control their costs. Now, what do I mean by it? I'm going to give you a good example. The president of Ohio State wanted to lease the parking garages and surface lots at Ohio State. The entire faculty fought him. I have no idea why. Well, he leased it and he got $500 million and he put it all into scholarships. There's no reason for universities to be building dormitories or having dining rooms. Let the private people do it. They'll do it better, they'll do it cheaper, and it'll work better. I mean, now, let me say another thing, though. We do have a problem with this debt. I've got a young man that works with me. He went to Miami University of Ohio, okay? And no, not of Florida, of Ohio. And, but look, I'm going to have to go to Florida in the fall, so I love Miami of Ohio, I mean the University of Florida. But anyway, what I wanted to tell you is that his debt is so high, it costs him more to pay his debt than it does for him to have an apartment or have a car. So we are going to have to deal with this. And the minute we can get these costs under control, we probably ought to create some sort of a community service program so we can begin to work that debt down. And in addition, you ought to be able to restructure this debt. There is no reason you should be paying interest rates higher than what the interest rates are. All those things should be done. Right here, sir. Here, would you hand that to him? There's too many people here to run. Just tell Dickerson to chill. He's going to go on CBS. They can wait. Did we do that? I asked that if that could be done. Do you know?
Good afternoon. I'm the voice for the 5.1 million that don't have a voice any longer. And I'm talking about the tsunami that's about to hit the shores of the nation. That is called Alzheimer's and related dementias. Right now, it's costing us in Medicaid and Medicare over $160 billion, and that's projected to go to almost $1 trillion by 2050 if we don't have a cure by then. In perspective, right now, that's about twice of what we spend in our national defense. So what are you going to do to help cure this tsunami coming on?
Well, look, this is, see, I want to balance the budget, and we will. And I just want you to know something. I'm going to get to your, let me have this. See this thing? When my kids were about 11, we were on vacation, and they said, "Daddy, what is that box over there?" And I was looking. Oh, girls, that's where Superman changes his clothes. And your mom and dad, we used to put coins in there to make a phone call. And my daughters are like, "No way. No, that can't be." Everything has changed in America. Medicine, transportation, communication, shopping, everything. And the only thing that hasn't changed is the government. In fact, the government sometimes tries to prevent change. For example, there's a big battle in a lot of cities where the taxi industry is trying to prevent Uber from coming in, okay? And politicians get weak and they sell out. We should Uberize the entire government at every single level, okay? Now, thanks for the smartphone. But sir, look, and that means in the context of balancing a budget, you have to have some priorities. And a big priority is the National Institutes of Health. When I was budget chairman and we balanced the budget, we doubled the funding for the National Institutes of Health. Because what he's pointing out is true. You know, the great thing is we're all living longer. And now all of a sudden we're being affected by things that we never were affected by before. So that's good, and it's a challenge. So what do we have to do? I think we have to have a significant increase in the National Institutes of Health. But let me tell you a couple other things. What does it need to focus on? Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, pancreatic cancer, childhood cancers. I mean, there's so much we have to do. But when we give this money to the universities, they cannot suck it up into overhead. They need to put it directly into research. I mean, maybe a little bit to cover some of their overhead costs, but baloney if they're going to take it and you know, because these dollars are precious, absolutely precious. And we got to have these breakthroughs. And I'm committed to, I mean, look, we're all committed to it. It's going to affect every one of us, you know, in one way or another. You hear a story of a woman that tells me, you know, my father or my mother has Alzheimer's. I've got friends that have gone through this, one with his wife. We got to get on the top of it. And the research into the brain, and I'll give you another area that we need to work on, not just there, we need to work on the area of depression. And the other issue we need to focus on. We need to focus also on the issue of pain, chronic pain, because we cannot solve that with these opiates because we're creating addicts in the process. So we're going to have to spend money. And you know, and I was just watching the other day, on 60 Minutes, they had these billionaires who were given like 90% of their money to, maybe we ought to get some of that money. I'd call Bill Gates and say, let's put a lot of that money into medical research. I don't know if he'll talk to me or not. You know, now that I'm running for president, he might talk to me. But anyway, sir, so it's a real problem. And I want you to know, we're not going to leave you out there. We don't know when these breakthroughs come, but we've got to spend the money. Yes, ma'am. Okay. What's that? Where's the overflow? Yes. Yeah. Hey. Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you. Okay. No. Just let me back here. Let me speak. Okay. Okay. Look, let me just tell you. Don't be angry at me, because you don't know what I've done. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you a couple things. First of all, the single biggest increase in my budget in the state of Ohio was to help the disabled. Number one. Number two, we absolutely want, you know what? No, just hold on. Okay, listen, let me tell you why. Somebody told me, listen. Okay, anyway, let me tell you why. Yes. Okay, look, I want to just tell you something. We have, you listen to me. I just want to spend a second here about this, because I heard that this might come here, okay? It doesn't, look, I went to school in the 70s. I know what protest is, okay? Now, let me go on. Now, let me tell you something, though. We have worked aggressively, by the way, to get people out of these institutions and in the community, and in the course of doing that, by the way, you get criticized. But look, the guy that runs my program has a son now who's adult, who's severely developmentally disabled. Of course we're helping these folks, but here's the thing I want to tell you. In Ohio, but throughout this country, people who, let's go back and think about some of the civil rights movements. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when African Americans were discriminated against, and they still have an uphill struggle in many respects, and thank goodness they were joined and they protested and they changed the law. The developmentally disabled, they live in the shadows, and politicians run over them because, you know what? They don't have any political clout. Well, they do have clout, but it's not here. And I don't mind this, because we all have to be aware of the fact that those who are developmentally disabled and their families have a very, very difficult time. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they have an opportunity to rise. And I think at that, we've heard enough. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, overflow.
Thank you, Governor, for coming to Rochester today. I'm proud to work at a local hospital. I'm proud to work at a local hospital. My wife is proud to be an educator. We believe there should always be a safety net as far as government entitlements, and you spoke to this a little bit earlier. I would just like to know what your thoughts are more broadly, abstract, about what we're seeing, expansion of an entitlement attitude.
Yeah.
Everybody works really hard. Some people are expecting some sort of handout. I've read a little bit of research on your website about the workfare program and successes in Ohio, what we could do nationally.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was involved in look, here's the situation. What he's saying is we're like working like crazy. Both of us are working, and then people are getting things who are able-bodied and they're not working. So let me just try to talk about that for a few minutes. We have a program. I was involved in eliminating the entitlement in welfare in Washington. We actually passed that, and Bill Clinton signed it after we gave it to him 3 times. Now, I believe that I go on a basis of my mother's philosophy. It's a sin not to help somebody who needs help, but it's equally a sin to continue to help somebody who needs to learn how to help themselves, okay? Now, I put the 20-hour work week requirement in on food stamps. If you're able-bodied, you have to work 30 hours a week. If you get welfare or if you get food stamps, you work 20 hours a week, okay? Now, here's what's really interesting, though. In my state of 11.5 million, do you know how many people are on cash assistance? I will give you the answer. About 120,000. See, we are led to believe like everybody's on welfare. And if you're on food stamps, you're on food stamps because your income level's not very high. But you still have to work for it. So I want you to know there's no real free lunch. Or do people cheat? Do they? Yeah, of course they do. It happens. It happens. But in our state, what we're telling the welfare office is you will have one caseworker. When somebody walks in and needs help, you will have one person in charge of them, and you will direct them to get trained for a job that's open in the state. And if they will not get trained, we have to discipline them, okay? That's just the way it works. But what we really want is we don't want them to be trained for something that doesn't exist. I mentioned up front in my comments, get the businesses
ran with the man who was going. You had talked in your opening statements about how your father was a 30-year veteran of the Postal Service. I'm a 14-year employee of the Postal Service. I'm also a union member. And I'd like to know, what is your plan for the Postal Service and what's your stance on unions in general?
Okay, now, I'm not for getting rid of the Postal Service. And one thing that people want, what is your name? Jonna. One thing we don't want to do is go to the post office and have 10 people walking around in the back while we're waiting at a window with 10 people in line. I mean, that's all. Make it work. Make it efficient. And, but let's talk about organized labor a little bit. Initially, in my first term, I had a battle with them. And they crushed me, to be honest with you. And I think the legislation we had went too far. And it wouldn't have worked that way had I had a little bit more experience. The way I look at organized labor is, as long as they are working with the job creators in a constructive way, they're great. So, for example, I received the endorsement of the operating engineers, they're the ones that build the roads, of the building trades union, and the other one I got was the carpenters. I nailed that endorsement down, okay? But here's the thing, and this is interesting. This is very interesting, because you're not going to hear this much. We have a company from Thailand that wants to build a big energy facility in our state. And the facility they will spend $4.5 billion building this thing. And we won the site selection. So what they want to know is, who's going to build it? And will it come in on time, and will it come in at cost? So guess who I sent? I sent the unions down to meet with the executives from Thailand. And guess what they said, the people from Thailand? They said it was the best workforce presentation they had heard. And we won the deal. Okay, now we don't know if the full investments, we'll know in January. They spent $100 million in Ohio now looking at building this facility. There was a case where organized labor worked to the best interests of the people of the state, and there will be many jobs that will be connected to this. If organized labor, though, starts to do things that disrupts and keeps our companies from being able to be effective, efficient, and create jobs, then we have a problem. So as far as I'm concerned, it's up to them, not up to me. You work together, we work collaboratively. You look out for a worker, fine. Just don't be, you know, the biggest problem is when union bosses care more about them keeping their own job than the workers. So as long as they care about the workers, I'm fine and cool and copacetic with it. So, do you deliver the mail? Yes. Perfect. Just keep doing it. You'll live to be 100 if you do that, okay? I could take one more. I could take right there, this lady right here. Then I have to go. Go ahead. Yes.
With the promising talent we have today, we do have a lot of effective treatments that are on the horizon. We cannot get them through the FDA. I've worked with the FDA for over 4.5 years on an effective treatment for a rare disease, but the population is so small, the insurance lobbies are so high, it doesn't have the cost return. What are your thoughts in getting the FDA to be in sync with the additional research?
Well, here's the thing. You know, we all like to attack the FDA, and I've done it a lot of times in my career, because we think they're too slow and they don't respond. Now, there is a guy who was, I don't know what, he was a big official in the FDA, and his wife had cancer, and he hurried a drug up, and now he's under attack that he moved too fast. You know, it's like porridge. You can't go too slow, and you can't go too fast. It can't be too cold. It can't be too hot. It's got to be just right. And when it comes to these rare diseases, that's where you have to use the power of arithmetic to be able to balance out those people who have these problems so you can create a safe place for them to go. It's possible to do that. And so, look, we just can't be, everybody's kind of leaving, so I'm leaving, okay? This is what happens in a concert when you've played too long. Anyway, we're not going to ignore them. All right, it's time for me to go, and it's time for everybody to go. I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you all very much, and God bless.